Guyana, a former British colony, is a tropical paradise of lush forests and stunning scenery. But dirt poor, the country is trying to assert itself against Western dominance. Bharrat Jagdeo, a Soviet-trained economist, is president. Every day he struggles to improve his country's fortunes against desperate odds. Granted exclusive access, we follow the embattled leader and his cabinet over 6 roller coaster months.
Suddenly, this new surprise was sprung on us. As soon as we started the negotiations on the new economic partnership agreement, we're faced with this proposal.
President Jagdeo has called a press conference. His country's sugar industry is in crisis.
It is an issue of bad faith, and it's going to lead to a lack of trust. How can we trust any new position that Europe puts on the table? This could cost us in excess of $35 million per annum.
Guyana is a former British colony which existed for one purpose and one purpose alone: to produce sugar. In the 18th century, British entrepreneurs created huge, vastly profitable plantations using slave labor. And when the country became independent in 1966, sugar remained Guyana's biggest industry. Now the country faces a potential disaster. The European Union is proposing to slash the price it pays for all African, Caribbean and Pacific sugar, with devastating consequences for the already fragile Guyanese economy.
Sugar employs about 18,000 people directly and maybe another 15,000 indirectly. So you can assess for yourself the impact that it would have on our economy.
Bharrat Jagdeo was only 35 when he became president of Guyana 6 years ago in 1999. And this is one of the biggest challenges he has faced to date. He's furious because the European Union is reneging on an agreement made 30 years ago to guarantee in perpetuity the price the Union would pay for Guyanese sugar.
When that marketing contract was developed, the domestic price and everything else were really way below the protocol price. Most people don't remember that.
See, what happens is that they're focusing on reducing the price, but then you have a whole range of compensatory measures for European farmers, including income support. Prime Minister Atchison mentioned this to Tony Blair at a breakfast meeting in London. Somehow that perspective seems to be lost in this whole discussion.
So what do you make Tony Blair?
I would prefer not to comment on that. I'd prefer not to comment on that.
David Daberdeen, Guyana's ambassador to UNESCO, is deeply worried about what the future holds for the country's sugar workers. So he's meeting the president of their trade union.
You know, Europe is threatening to give us less money for our sugar. What effect will that have on the working people?
It could result in the closure of some of our sugar estates.
Which means people will be out of work?
And which means that thousands of people will be out of jobs.
So what will they do?
That is the problem, that you need an alternative, and it is not easy to find an alternative in today's world. People will be forced into the drug trade. The drug trade could get very bigger. Prostitution and crime will increase.
The trade union leader paints a bleak picture, an impression confirmed by the sugarcane workers.
What will happen to you if the price of sugar drops?
If the price drops for the sugar industry, for the sugar, you cripple Guyanese people. Far you cripple. Because if you're here now, and you got your creep on your knee almost, when you drop, you know, go crowd by your belly.
So what would you do if they retrench you, you got no work?
We got a thief or murder somebody to eat. We got hunger. We got children. So if the sugar price drop, is everybody going to punish?
Ambassador Dabedin's outraged at the seemingly arbitrary behavior of the European Union and decides to challenge the head of the Commission in Guyana about why they are prepared to jeopardize the country's sugar industry.
I just wondered whether there wasn't a great deal of sadness and regret and even shame, really, attached to this new initiative.
The cost of the sugar in Europe is 2-3 times higher than the world market prices. And anyone can understand that this is not a viable situation. It can't continue like that.
But what it means is when I go to England and buy a donut, I will now buy it for 28 pence rather than 30 pence because we're paying less for our sugar. In the meantime, people here are going hungry.
I think that is an enormous simplification.
We were historically a monoculture, and we're very good at doing our cane. Now, I think it's very easy for somebody like me to say, well, let's do cocoa, let's do palm oil. This demands a great shift in culture, technology and knowledge.
But I do believe we should not underestimate the ability of people to adapt to new situations, and that also crisis or perceived crisis also makes creativity emerge.
I did ask the cane cutters exactly that, but in different words. I said, what would you do if you had no food? He said, my wife will have to become a prostitute. That was a straight answer. He had to swallow his shame, you know. So that is not the kind of inventiveness that we need.
I don't think there's a need to take such drastic measures. This is a phasing out. That will also allow people to find alternatives over a number of years.
Despite the Commissioner's soothing words, the stark reality is that the traditional mainstays of the Guyanese economy, sugar, rice and bauxite, are in decline. So, like so many third world countries, Guyana is looking to tourism for salvation, and its wildlife and scenery are spectacular. But there's one major drawback. Unlike most Caribbean countries, Guyana is bereft of beaches. Over the sea wall, there's nothing but mud. However, true to form, President Jagdeo is optimistic that he can develop a tourist industry.
I think significantly, it's one of the largest growth areas currently in the economy. And I think that it has the potential of even replacing, as a source of foreign currency, some of the traditional sectors.
Come, visit the land of the mighty Roraima. Come, absorb and be absorbed by the classic poetry of nature.
Mansour Nadir is Jagdeo's Minister for Tourism, Industry and Commerce, charged with boosting tourist numbers. This morning, he's checking the British High Commission's website that offers advice for visitors travelling to Guyana.
Over recent months, there have been a number of indiscriminate shootings, armed robberies and carjackings. I don't know about that. There have also been a number of kidnappings and threats to kidnap. House burglary, yes, we do have quite a bit of that. Theft from cars, yes. Protect your passport, money, tickets, not. That's standard in almost any country you go to. But this is concerning to me. Even if staying with family, do not leave these possessions in view. Oh, come on, Guyanese are among the most hospitable around. Outside of Georgetown and these areas, it is saying levels are generally lower. What does generally lower mean? Outside of these areas, the crime is almost non-existent. It certainly paints a very bad picture and not close to the reality on the ground.
Is it difficult to get people to come to Guyana?
The problem we have is those persons who hear of Guyana sometimes think it's Ghana in Africa.
It's clear that Nadir faces an uphill task to turn Guyana into a viable tourist destination. But as luck would have it, Guyana does have a sugar daddy in the form of its powerful neighbor, the United States. Through its aid agency, USAID, the Americans are prepared to give Jagdeo's government a grant to promote tourism, so long as the Guyanese produce a coherent strategy for spending the money.
Your minister is going to be a recipient of a big chunk of our economic growth program as one of the sectors we in USAID are trying to promote. Unless we really have a program, unless we have this action plan and we start spending money, to be very difficult for us to make a decision on requesting and allocating additional funds.
8 months ago, USAID offered Jagdeo's government a grant of 31 million Guyanese dollars, equivalent to £90,000. But the Ministry of Tourism has still not produced the paperwork needed to release the funds.
We have 31 million
It's sitting there in the
Guyanese
Ministry
dollars.
of Finance right now.
It's sitting there waiting.
But this 31 million is going to be spent on marketing?
Yeah, this 31 million need to move past.
Yeah, we're gonna get this done.
So we can make the new allocation. What you can do is, it's your imagination.
Nadir realizes that unless he moves fast, Guyana risks losing out on a huge chunk of money which is there for the taking.
Donald, the issue has surfaced again about this marketing program, right? Now, Dr. Sarhan visited me today with good news and bad news. The good news is that we could get as much as $200 million over the next 3 years from USAID out of the Economic Growth Program for Tourism, right? The bad news is that we have a bad record as being tardy in putting up a program for the 31 million. Some policy decisions have been made, but I have to get some strategic plans done pretty fast. This is 31 million. This is just, we need to get this program done.
Okay, we'll spell out the details.
Right? Now, this doesn't require a long essay, right? And I can get a sign off on this quite fast. This money's been sitting for 8 months at the Ministry of Finance.
This is Kaieteur Falls, shimmering, resplendent. It is a silver ornamental clasp lodged in the thick tresses of the surrounding jungle.
Meanwhile, President Jagdeo is still wrestling with the sugar crisis. He's off to Grenada to attend a meeting of the Caribbean Community Heads of State. Here, he plans to present a paper castigating the European Union's stance on sugar prices and so unite all the producers against the European initiative.
Most important is a consensus from the CARICOM sugar producers, actually from CARICOM sentiment, not only sugar producers, but total Caribbean sentiment in opposition to the adoption of the proposals.
Mr. Bharrat Jagdeo, President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana.
Given the backdrop of the sugar crisis, this year's conference is a highly charged event for Jagdeo and his government.
I just see a kind of devastation in the future. We are sugar. Sugar are us, you know. Our whole lives have been sugar. Our history is sugar. And if that industry is halved, well, I could just see hunger, malnutrition.
The food is bad. It's horrible.
Meanwhile, the Minister for Tourism faces a major domestic crisis. He finds his food inedible and wants his wife to sack the cook.
The food was horrible. I brought back all the food.
I did as well.
But look for a cook because, it doesn't make sense. You have a cook, cooking your food and throwing it away every day, and then you still have to buy food. Your job must be paying well.
You want to know?
So you don't tell Minister how much you're earning?
No. No.
Why is that?
I don't know. I just like keeping guessing, I suppose.
It's her money. She says that I have an obligation to look after her.
That too.
And so don't ask her financial business. That's her business. Her money to do what she wants. So this thing about equality doesn't really work. And that's one of the problems we have when you have working women. They have their own lives and, you're expected to go with them, but they don't come with you anymore.
He would love for me to be at home 24/7.
Yeah.
In my opinion, he's a typical Guyanese Indian man who always wants his wife at home. No independence.
For Mr. Nadir, the domestic tension is particularly trying. He's under pressure to produce the tourism report in time for the president's return. He's also got a meeting with the British High Commission. He's furious with them over the negative travel guidelines they've given Guyana. This is his opportunity to have a go at them.
I had made a formal request for our Foreign Office to talk to your High Commission. I don't know if they did, some months ago.
The summary states that most trips to Guyana are trouble-free, as long as you take usual precautions. So,
but even going down to the families stealing from you is something horrible.
We have had problems with British citizens coming here and facing these problems before in their family homes. So we have to express the views of the British High Commission and how we view security in the country. But I mean, we certainly take your point, usual precautions. It's what we would say about London. We certainly we have an ongoing dialogue on this. So.
Almost most of the restaurants in downtown, you see a big sign about hold on to your cameras and wallets and so. But if that ever happens in Georgetown here, I think you would nail us to the cross in terms of your travel advisories.
Nadir's finding it hard enough to attract tourists to Guyana without the country's so-called friends sticking the knife in.
Our travel advice has to be drafted on behalf of British citizens travelling to Guyana. So we obviously stand by the advice that we produce and submit.
If one is just reading the advisories on the net as a way of shortlisting which countries to go to next, you would immediately cancel out Guyana.
About it now and again. Well, I wouldn't say lock horns. We discuss travel advice on a regular basis, but we have slightly different views on certain issues. But as at the end of the day, we always do business together. We're always friendly, so not a problem. All right, back up to the Pegasus. Yeah.
Back at the ministry, Nadir's officials are working overtime on the tourism report. But on this evening of all evenings, the minister is summoned away by another crisis at home. The family cat has died, possibly in suspicious circumstances, as the vet explains.
It wasn't poison, though. It wasn't poison. Yeah. Liver failure and kidney failure. That's not old age alone. It's age. Okay, so you had a full cat life. Okay, doc. Yeah, she's a bit cut up, yeah.
It's hard, I guess. Because I grew up with him too, so it makes it harder.
Georgetown is about 8 feet below sea level.
So everybody in Georgetown ends up in a watery grave, do they?
Especially when it's raining, yes.
So you can read this? I was gonna put it in.
Family and friends have come to offer their condolences.
Okay. Don't cry. Okay, don't cry.
Minister Nadir sets up a webcam so his son in Canada can watch the cat's funeral.
Nice. You do good, nice. Okay. Yeah. Everyone will miss this cat. Was my partner. Whenever I come home, he's always around. Been here 13 years with us.
Okay.
Very, very difficult for her. He hasn't eaten all day, and even last night she slept with her mother and father because she was worried about the cat.
Go put your flowers, go. Up.
Mr. and Mrs. Nadir comfort their daughter. Meanwhile, across town, the marketing plan is receiving its final touches. It has to be on the minister's desk first thing in the morning.
Hundreds of interlocking rivers and creeks run like binding threads through this enchanted carpet. Hence the name Guyana, an Amerindian word that means land of many waters.
Back at the regional conference, President Jagdeo has succeeded in pushing sugar to the top of the agenda. He's persuaded his fellow Caribbean leaders that they won't have any leverage over the European Union unless they unite together in protest.
I hope that we can have a strongly worded statement coming out of this conference on sugar, expressing CARICOM solidarity and disgust about what's taking place now within the European Union in relation to sugar. Often, the European Union speaks about supporting development and about the share of the GDP that it gives in aid, but it does not have consistent policies. This is the most we can do, is to expose the double standards and the bad faith.
What can the president do? The price of sugar is not determined in Guyana. We're just the peasants who grow the sugar. The price of sugar is determined in the stock markets and markets of Europe, you know, and by civil servants. There's nothing we could do except lobby, protest, complain, remind people of our history, and tell them about the potential devastation, human devastation, and hope to move them in some way.
Dawn on Friday, and Minister Nadir's received the long overdue marketing plan.
This morning I had an opportunity to look at this short-term marketing plan. When I read this morning, I got a bit angry. I would not dare put this to the president.
Minister Nadir feels he can't rely on his civil servants to get the document right, so he cancels his plans for the weekend to rewrite it. The paper must be ready so that it can be debated at Cabinet later that week.
I have gotten at least 7 pages, 8 pages, 9 pages out of a 14-page document done. So we're getting this long-awaited document finally out.
This is the Cabinet room where the ministers meet every week behind closed doors to debate policy. In an hour's time, Mr. Nadir will make his case. He has to convince his colleagues that his marketing plan is the best way of spending the money on offer from USAID. He prepares for the day with a healthy breakfast. Once all the members of Cabinet have assembled, Mr. Jagdeo joins them. He's in a combative mood.
You are disclaiming that is so, to make public statement that it is.
Your item is next up, Mansour.
It is going to take a lot of money to bring a new tourist to Guyana. We have to go out there with the consumer advertising, not only in the specific magazines, but we're going to have to start doing some commercial media advertising to attract that first-time visitor to Guyana.
I want to come back to this point, Mansour, about growing the number of first-time visitors.
Yes.
If you have 6,000 per year and you divide that by 365, you're getting less than 20 persons per day.
Yes.
Now, if you're talking tourism and you're talking less than 20 per day in a country, you're not really doing much. Growing from 20 to 40 doesn't take that much marketing. I can't believe that it really takes that much marketing.
But I just want to clear
when
up
you have a new, fresh product.
And that's why I say we have to concentrate more effort on that particular segment, because that is a segment that will occupy the rooms, that will use the taxis, that will buy food, that will buy craft.
I think we have to be a bit more smart with spending our money. Countries like ours that have limits. And I don't think we're using the internet enough.
Yeah, in the proposal, we have an e-marketing initiative that...
Yeah, but let me finish. The huge possibilities of the internet. It's low cost, but you get to people. Okay? Anyhow, let's move on. Right.
Following further discussion with the president, Minister Nadia's marketing program was approved. He's on course to get the rest of the money on offer from the US. Tourism may have received a boost, but the sugar crisis remains unresolved. However, despite their anger over the European Union's plan to abolish the sugar subsidy, members of President Jagdeo's government feel compelled to turn out for a reception to commemorate Europe Day. Prime Minister Sam Hinds decides not to put the boot in.
It is our hope that the European Union will continue its much-needed support of our national development efforts by preserving the benefits which we enjoy under the various ACP-EU agreements, and that despite the myriad of challenges presented by globalization, the progress we have achieved so far would not be compromised. Please join with me, ladies and gentlemen, in proposing a toast to Europe and to many more years of fruitful collaboration. Cheers.
The truth is that the Caribbean countries have very little room for maneuver when it comes to taking on the big trading blocs.
In the case of sugar, we are trying to do two things: to fight as much of a delaying action as we could in losing the preferential arrangements. And on the other hand, we're working to improve our local production costs so that we could be competitive on the world market.
The realities of the geopolitics. This is a personal view. I don't know how much developing countries can fight the big trading blocs and the big countries in terms of this whole issue of subsidies, trade liberalization, and reforming agriculture.
There is very little that we may be able to do to stave off this unilateral action. We'd argue for longer transitional periods and some help for some compensation in the transitional period. Europe is treating its farmers very differently. So it bothers me that Europe is saying, we are all in favor of the Millennium Challenge goals, cut poverty by half, reduce infant mortality, get more women into the workforce and stuff like that. This single act would wipe out all the gains we've made in Guyana in the past 10 years.